This is Nasha Kasha, Ukrainian Almanac. I'm your reporter Stefan Andrusiak, and this is episode 133. It is early December 2018. Late last month, Russia seized 3 Ukrainian naval boats, imprisoning their crews. It all happened in the Kerch Strait near the Sea of Azov. Ukraine responded by imposing martial law for 30 days. As I record this, Russia is holding missile drills in the Black Sea. NATO has been meeting in Brussels to assess a response. It is the latest escalation in a military conflict which began in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea, then sent fighters into eastern Ukraine to back separatist rebels. In Ontario, at the University of Waterloo, I'll speak with a scholar on Crimea whose sanguine analysis describes how we find ourselves today at the edge of war. But first, to Montreal, where a theater premieres a play about volunteer Ukrainian combatants in East Ukraine and their near impossible predicament.
І Олеся з цього боку. Тепер всі костюми, я бачу, що ви приготували. Надівайте їх.
My name is Yevhen Meshcheryak. I am an actor for the Ukrainian National Federation Theater, the Stojari Theater. Our upcoming play, Eastern Holiday, Східні канікули. My character's name is Maxim. He's a young student in journalism in Ukraine who decides to join the volunteer forces in the conflict in Eastern Ukraine.
What does the audience come away with?
In the beginning of the play, he starts out as this young man from a relatively wealthy family in a big Ukrainian city that is not touched by the conflict that's happening relatively close. After certain events occur in his life, mostly concerning people he considers close to himself, Max decides to prove to himself and to the people around him that he's more than just a boy from a wealthy family. His character arc, his coming of age, is somewhat parallel to the moral evolution that the nation of Ukraine herself is coming. Before the war, we were not as serious about questions of nationalism, of patriotism as we are right now, and same happens to Max. He doesn't really take anything seriously until he grows up.
This play is being premiered tomorrow at a time when the Sea of Azov is the center of even a wider conflict. Ukraine truly seems to be in trouble.
Well, yeah, we've discussed that with the cast and the crew on multiple occasions. Now, like never, our play is relevant, which kind of gives us more motivation. It is something that bothers each and every one of us. It motivates us more to do our best on the scene because it's not just like a play that represents something that happened a long time ago.
The government of Ukraine does not escape criticism in this.
Yes, certainly, because regardless of the fact that we as a nation should be as united as possible at this point right now, we still have to realize that the world is not all black and white, and even our government, which, well, I personally have a lot of respect for, even our government is far from being perfect.
Tomorrow's a big day for you. How do you feel after this dress rehearsal?
I am very excited for it because that's been a major project for me for the last 5 months or so. Outside of it being our personal journey, it's also a manifestation of all things Ukrainian and a way to attract attention to the situation in Ukraine, which unfortunately does not receive as much media coverage. Як для молодого чоловіка, мені 20 років, тобто...
Yevhen is 20 years old, and he says, many in Ukraine, my age, are in the army.
Ну, це далеко не найбільше, що я можу зробити, на жаль.
Others have volunteered for the militia. I'm hoping that what I do here has some impact, some value. We all love Ukraine, he says. Here, an ocean away, the play is dedicated to all who've sacrificed.
Борітесь та й поборете. Слава Україні. Наша п'єса, вона присвячується всім, хто загинув, хто борючись за свободу, і всім, хто продовжує йти далі. І ми сподіваємося, що Україна буде продовжувати йти далі.
Прийшла у березні зима, прийшла негода, як чума, б'є по обличчю до чаю. Мені тебе не вистачає, тільки тебе, тільки тебе, тільки тебе не вистачає, тільки тебе, тільки тебе. заледенів грубезний дуб, і плащ зелений мій задуб. Далеко ще до молодшаю, мені тебе не вистачає, тільки тебе, тільки тебе, тільки тебе не вистачає, тільки тебе, тільки тебе, тільки тебе. Гримить за сіверським донцем, мозолю пальці олівцем, як кулі рими витрачаю, мені тебе не вистачає, тільки тебе, тільки тебе, тільки тебе не вистачає, тільки тебе, тільки тебе, тільки тебе. Мовчить старенька БМП, собака солодко хропе, не гасне печія очаю, мені тебе не вистачає, тільки тебе, тільки тебе, тільки тебе не вистачає, тільки тебе, тільки тебе, тільки тебе. Вмирають іскри на льоду, хапають руки пустоту, заводжу пісню і скінчаю, мені тебе не вистачає, тільки тебе, тільки тебе, тільки тебе не вистачає, тільки тебе, тільки тебе, тільки тебе, тільки тебе, тільки тебе, тільки тебе не вистачає, тільки тебе, тільки тебе, тільки тебе.
Чи ви б могли самі себе представити?
Славко Онищенко.
Ольга Онищенко.
Slavko and Oля Onishchenko. To look at them in the midst of this theater company, one would believe that they were born to do this. Oля says, though, that she has never formally been trained. Slavko was drawn to the theater only by Oля.
Завжди була на сцені, або ведучою, або в якихось концертах, або в якихось сценаріях. Завжди мені це дуже подобалось.
Ніколи не грав в театрі, але завжди любив. І так сталося, що дружина мене з цим ближче познайомила, притягнула і дуже радо приймаю участь в стажарах.
А ваша професія, наука, у який напрям взяла вас?
Я моряк, я вчився в Одеській морській академії. За фахом я морський механік.
Slavko is a seaman by training, trained at the Odessa Naval Academy. His specialty, freight management.
Вантажний інспектор.
Коли ми приїхали в Монреаль, це було 10 років тому, зустрілися з...
Having arrived in Montreal, they quickly found their way to the Ukrainian National Federation Hall. With newfound friends, they formed an acting company.
Нам подобається театр, вони сказали, давайте будемо тут щось робити в УНО.
Технічна сторона – це те, що ніхто не бачить, але без цього...
Slavko was drawn to the behind-the-scenes work of set design and building.
Я зголосився на це.
Це не є легка п'єса.
Oля is the director, and this, the play that they're about to put on, she wrote.
Знаєте, коли сталася трагедія в Іловайську в 2014 році, я не могла заспокоїтись.
The play is about the Battle of Ilovaisk in August 2014.
Почався цей військовий конфлікт з Росією.
Armed forces of Ukraine and pro-Ukrainian paramilitaries tried to recapture the city of Ilovaisk. It had been occupied by pro-Russian insurgents who were affiliated with the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, or the DPR. But Russian military forces had crossed the border, joining in the battle. The Ukrainians were encircled and overwhelmed by their enemies.
Ця тема вона мені абсолютно не давала спокою, і я шукала, як
An agreement was reached that should have permitted the Ukrainian soldiers safe passage out, but retreating Ukrainians were gunned down. Casualties were in the hundreds. Olya's play is based on a book about that battle. The chief of the general staff and commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Viktor Mushenko, would later admit that Ukrainian commanders' incompetence in the planning of the retreat was in part to blame for the debacle.
Ще раз.
Slavko feels that Russia's recent muscle flexing in the Sea of Azov defies all human
Мусить
conventions.
світ відповісти адекватними діями.
He suggests banning ships flying Russian flags across the Turkish Straits.
Прапором протоків. Першим чином це Босфор і Дарданели, тобто замкнути їх на Чорному морі. Також
These straits connect the Aegean, the Mediterranean, and the Black Seas.
пролив в протоках їх також
Knowledgeable and trained to be at sea, I ask if he misses the mariner's life.
Ні.
Today, not at all, he replies.
Що ви хочете, щоб глядачі присутні взяли з собою?
Oля wants her audiences to feel empowered when they see her play. Each of us, she says, should feel joy and not fear the world around us as we search for a way to help.
не треба нічого боятись, просто треба діяти. І кожен може допомогти. Не треба ховатися, говорити, а що я можу, я далеко, Україна десь там, а я тут. Кожен може з свого боку допомогти. Я хочу, щоб вони відчули свою важливість і величезну радість від того, що вони можуть це зробити, допомогти своїм побратимам в Україні.
Дякую вам обом, що ви принесли вашу спільну силу до нашої громади.
Дякую вам щиро.
Дякую.
Сонце заслонить та хмара чорненька, то зараз вона імена. А на Україні все нічка темненька, і сонця нема, та й нема. А на Україні все нічка темненька, і сонця нема, та й нема. Як зашумлять прагори, як сурми заграють, ставайте, молодці, погідь. Підемо вперед, з нами весь наш нарід, з нами правдолюбивий світ. Рветься серце до сонця, рветься серце до волі. Кличе нас вітчина, мила і дорога Україна.
You're listening to Nasha Kasha, Ukrainian Almanac on CHRW 94.9 FM at Western University in London, Ontario, Canada. Also on CHMR 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland. On CKDU 88.1 FM in Halifax. On Local 107.3 FM in St. John, New Brunswick. On CJLO 1690 AM in Montreal. On CFRC 101.9 FM in Kingston. On CFMU 93.3 FM in Hamilton, CKMS 102.7 FM in Kitchener-Waterloo, on CKLU 96.7 FM in Sudbury, on CILU 102.7 FM in Thunder Bay, on 101.5 UMFM in Winnipeg, and on CFMQ 98.1 FM in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan.
My name is John Jaworski, or Ivan Jaworski, and I actually have been using Ivan more and more in recent years, even for some of my publications. Born in Hamilton, I grew up essentially in Ottawa, where I went to school, high school, and then university. During my PhD studies, I applied for a job at the University of Waterloo and was appointed first as a contract lecturer and then as a full-time instructor beginning in 1987. so recently retired after spending 31 years with the Department of Political Science at the University of Waterloo. Okay, to understand Donbass and what has been happening in Donbass, including in recent years, I think one has to keep in mind that Donbass is what you can see as a deteriorating Rust Belt region, outmoded metallurgical industry, coal mines that were becoming increasingly difficult to exploit, etc. But it was also neglected by Kiev to a large extent, and the various governments in Kiev going back to the 1990s, so in a sense, allowed the local oligarchs in eastern Ukraine to exploit this region even further. Many people in Donbass still live with the image that we were the powerhouse or one of the powerhouses of the Soviet Union. They have failed to realize the extent to which they became over time in recent decades and already in the late Soviet Union a kind of, as I said, deteriorating and dysfunctional rusty region, Rust Belt region. And then there was Kiev's neglect. And Kiev, in terms of regional policies, that is support for the regions, development of the regions, that has been a consistent problem from independence onwards. And it's not just Crimea, it's not just Donbass. All of Ukraine's regions were neglected in terms of Kiev failing to come up with good and effective regional policies. There has been some correction there in the last few years as a result of decentralization efforts, which have provided the regions, the oblasti, with more autonomy, and less the oblasti, but even further down, the rayone and cities and so on and so forth. Some see this as a success, one of the few successes of post-2014 Ukraine. Some of these local governments, municipal and other local governments, have finally been provided with the kind of autonomy that allows them to develop more effectively.
Well, taxing powers, property taxes, businesses, people didn't pay property taxes. They paid general taxes, and then some bureaucrat in Kyiv decided not only how much a municipality would get, but how to spend that money.
Yes, decentralization is generally seen as a success story for Ukraine, but again, it's a bit paradoxical. You have Ukraine facing a very troubled conflict in eastern Ukraine and trying to decentralize at the same time. Nonetheless, this process of granting more powers to local governments has, in some cases at least, in quite a few cases, allowed these local governments to develop in a more effective and functional fashion.
Can we take it to the events in the Sea of Azov and just add it to the tension worldwide?
The issue is related very much to the status of Crimea. So it is de facto controlled by Russia, but de jure, meaning in law, it is still considered part of Ukraine. There was an agreement dating back to 2003, which allowed both Russia and Ukraine to control the waters of the Sea of Azov, as well as the waters of the strait connecting the Black Sea to the Sea of Azov. Russia, however, considers that it is now in legitimate control of Crimea, although that legitimacy has not been recognized by the international community, and therefore argues that it is in control of both sides of the land on both sides of the Kerch Strait, and therefore has the full right to control shipping between the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov.
Thus cutting off some of our ports in Ukraine.
Two major ports on the Ukrainian side of the Sea of Azov. Those ports are Mariupol and Berdyansk.
Do you have a sense of how important to all of Ukraine's economy these two ports are?
Those two ports, the ones I mentioned, are more significant in terms of Ukraine's metallurgical exports, but they also export a fair amount of Ukraine's agricultural produce.
Ukraine, you reminded us, is connected to Crimea geographically by an isthmus, Mr. Putin decided to build a connection between Crimea and Russia, a physical one, a bridge. Could you reflect on that?
Projects of that sort, incidentally, go back quite a ways. There was even a German effort during World War II to build a bridge connecting Crimea with Russia, the territory of Russia. There was a brief-lived bridge, but it was a rather shoddy affair, and it was destroyed at some point during World War II. And a bridge was actually constructed fairly quickly and completed earlier this year in 2018, connecting the Kerch region of Crimea with the territory of what Ukrainians traditionally know as Kubань, part of the, I think it's Stavropol Krai in Russia. It's a long bridge. It's a bridge which was built in what are considered to be difficult conditions. It's not the best region for building a bridge, but nonetheless, a bridge has been built. Since sometime in the summer of 2018, there has been traffic. Some ships which used to travel to the ports of Mariupol and Berdyansk can no longer do so because of the height of the bridge. But many other ships can make including freighters, can go under the bridge, but there have been additional problems in terms of Russia trying to control the extent of shipping between the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov.
From where you sit as an academic, what are the options, military and diplomatic, to find a way out of this situation?
Well, one option, the military option, is not a particularly realistic one. That is military option for Ukraine. And that's largely because Ukraine didn't have a very large navy to begin with. And many of the ships it did have, even if they were somewhat run down, were lost when Crimea was occupied by Russia. Russia, in contrast, has very much built up its naval capacity. In military terms, Russia is in a much more powerful position. But Ukraine was trying to beef up its military presence on the Sea of Azov.
Is there evidence that Ukraine was trying to beef up its navy on the Sea of Azov?
Yes, there was talk even in recent months of Ukraine trying to establish a naval base in Berdyansk. This effort to move these small ships from Odessa to the Sea of Azov was probably interpreted by Russia as an effort by Ukraine to beef up its naval presence in the Sea of Azov.
Weak navy by any comparisons. Ukraine does have a standing army, and yet so much of the defense of eastern Ukraine and the population has been left to militia forces. Why these volunteer units?
Ukraine, although it inherited a very large part of the old Soviet armed forces, generally neglected its armed forces, and especially under President Yanukovych, the degree of corruption within the military, the extent to which military goods were being pilfered was really quite astounding. By 2014, Ukraine had a very small, underfunded, and neglected military. And that is why, essentially, in 2014, volunteer forces had to play a significant role in the Donbas region. The country, which emerged after Yanukovych fled Ukraine, then quickly began to devote more attention to building up its regular military. But essentially, the policy has been one of fighting fires since the major issue was the land conflict in Donbas. Ukraine had to build up its ground forces. Ukraine probably should have devoted more attention to quickly reviving its naval forces. We now see the unfortunate results, but it would have been difficult even in the best of circumstances. Building ships, by the way, is a major multi-year project, and that's why Ukraine has engaged in some discussions with the United States to get some ships, some small ships. That's one short-term option which was pursued and apparently is in the works. Russia's attempts to fully control shipping between the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov is overall considered to be illegitimate. Russia does have its own ports on the Sea of Azov. It is shipping goods out of those ports, and those ships could be sort of restricted in terms of their access to some of the ports in Europe. There are already statements coming from Western Europe that at a minimum, recent sanctions imposed on Russia will be rolled over, that is, will be continued. It might result in new sanctions being imposed.
Should the people of Ukraine feel that they are in good hands and be optimistic about the future?
Ukraine is entering a new electoral cycle at a time, at a difficult time, a time when Ukraine's economy, although reviving, is still relatively weak. Many feel that the current government, the Poroshenko government, has not done enough to revive the economy and especially fight corruption, which is still a very major issue in Ukraine. Some positive steps have been taken, but many steps have not been taken, and corruption still remains a major issue, including in circles close to the current president. So there is some significant dissatisfaction for very good reasons in Ukraine. Anything like the current crisis surrounding the Kerch Straits and access of shipping to the Azov Sea not only has an immediate impact in terms of Ukraine's exports, but also deters potential investment. So I think that's another major source of problems for Ukraine, the extent to which investment in Ukraine can be deterred by any signs of pressure coming from Russia on Ukraine's economy.
In the program, you heard Roman Senesal and the Telenyuk sisters Lesya and Halina with a cut from the album Songs of War. It's called Meni Tebe Ne Vystachai. Rushnichok played When Clouds Hide the Sun from Volume 5, and this is Ti Amen Ka with a song about the sea, simply called Voda or Water.
Моря такий колір, як і твого будинку номер. Я би приїхав, але мій ровер ще не вигадали, не зібрали, не побудували шлях. Цей цвях тримає дах, не вдах. У цього моря такий подих, як до очей долоні дотик. А море темне зовсім як твій поверх. Але сьогодні не тоді, і зараз я не я. Ще одна з маленьких трагедій, ще одного дня. Це тече, зорим, все мене.
Nasha Kasha is also a podcast. Subscribe for free at iTunes and at many other providers. Partial funding for the program comes from the Taras Shevchenko Foundation. I'm your reporter Stefan Andrusiak. Back in a week. До милої зустрічі за тиждень часу. Дорогі слухачі.